Story 1. Everyone voluntarily carries a device that tracks their every move, listens to their conversations, and shows personalized advertisements. Instead of being terrified of this dystopian scenario, people become anxious when the battery dies because they might miss a notification. Story 2. There would be many unbelievable things. For example, smartphones are used for almost everything except talking. Story 3. Mobile phones are now very advanced and the plans are affordable. I pay £12 a month with no contract for unlimited calls, texts, and 26 gigabytes of data. It used to cost 10 pence or 12 pence per text, depending on the network. Story 4. I once met a man who had just been released from a long prison sentence. He told me the most surprising thing was seeing everyone walking around looking at the ground instead of straight ahead. He went into prison before BlackBerry devices and iPhones existed and came out into today's smartphone world. I suppose that would be quite jarring. Story 5. 8 terabytes of data can fit on a chip the size of a stick of gum. You can buy a 70 to 80-inch 4000 resolution television for $400 to $500. Story 6. From 56 kilobits per second dial-up to 1 gigabit hyperfast broadband. Regular internet is faster than any storage medium at the time of the comma. How social media has fundamentally changed society and how a whole generation does not watch television. Story 7. Michael Jackson is deceased. Donald Trump is the president. Artificial intelligence performs various tasks. Unmanned aerial vehicles are in use. Intelligent devices are common. Autonomous vehicles are operating. The World Trade Center is no longer standing. Story 8. Donald Trump was elected twice. Whether you support him or not, that is remarkable. Story 9. That my phone is a camera, map, television, wallet, and taxi button. That we stream everything instead of owning it. That strangers film literally everything. That cars have giant screens and some drive themselves. That malls and cash kind of died. That doorbells talk. That artificial intelligence can chat back. And oh yes, there was a global pandemic. Story 10. Donald Trump became president, was impeached twice, indicted 4 times, and might still run again. Somehow, that is not the strangest event occurring. Story 11. Our current president is aligned with Russia's dictator. He won by cheating with the assistance of a ketamine addict who is also the wealthiest person in the world, a Nazi sympathizer from South Africa. He is a 34-time convicted felon and pedophile who desires his daughter. White supremacy is being encouraged. Women's reproductive rights are being rolled back. People are being snatched off the streets as if we live in Nazi Germany. Also, it is not butter. Story 12. Donald Trump went from late-night jokes to the leader of the free world. And then I would ask to be put back in a coma for another 10 years. Story 13. We descended into fascist authoritarianism under the leadership of a failed businessman turned reality television star with a known history of sexual assault and fraud. Story 14. There are reasons to worry about democracy surviving the current president in the United States. Many banks have offices that do not handle cash, at least in Sweden. There are people who do not believe in infections and contagious diseases, not because they grew up without education, but because they found other information on the internet. Story 15. 25 years ago, Bill Clinton was president. There was an actual budget surplus for the first time in 30 years, and the world as a whole was a fairly peaceful place. Imagine falling asleep back then and waking up to an America sliding into fascism with Donald Trump at the helm and a deficit of $1.7 trillion. Story 16. Probably how digital and connected the world is. I have gone from VHS tapes, 5 channels on the television, and cassette tapes to instant video and music streaming, being able to turn the lights in my room on and off with voice control and more. Story 17. 25 years ago. Do not talk to strangers. Do not ever get in a car with strangers. Now, rideshare services are everywhere. Story 18. Apparently, you can now just get into strangers' cars instead of taking a taxi, and it is not even creepy. Story 19. Turning millionaires from stock holdings but unable to understand everything that is happening, and not knowing how to use all the technology. Story 20. The President of the United States is a twice-impeached convicted felon who has been accused of inappropriate behavior. Story 21. Our President of the United States posted on social media about a dictator concerning physical attributes. Story 22. Waking up to see the United States of America went through an attempted fascist takeover in 2021, only to realize that it was successful in 2024 with blatant help from Elon Musk. Story 23. Donald Trump, the host of The Apprentice, is somehow the President of the United States. Even if he were a good president, which he is not, I find this fact completely stunning. I have not been in a coma, and I still find this fact completely stunning. Story 24. That measles is making a comeback in industrialized countries. I initially assumed that this was due to a superstrain of measles resistant to vaccination. How wrong I was. Story 25. We won the Cold War only to turn against ourselves and lose the peace. Also, Apple, which the press was still calling beleaguered back in 2000 before the iPod and iPhone, is now one of the 3 most valuable companies in the world. Story 26. The American people knowingly chose a rapist, cheating, pathological liar, narcissistic, criminal, grifting, pedophile moron over an intelligent, well-spoken, experienced, and caring candidate. Even after he accelerated the rise of the new Nazi Party, he still has an amazingly high approval rating given the situation. We learned about fascism in school and actively chose to do that to our country. Story 27. Gay marriage is legal nationwide. Cannabis is legal in half the country. However, books are being banned in schools again as if it were 1950. Story 28. The man from television became the President of the United States, was voted out but refused to accept it. He attempted an insurrection. Nothing ever happened to him, and then he was re-elected. Now the world is watching the United States become a stereotype of a dystopia similar to Nazi Germany. Also, because of him, there are now Nazis marching in the streets in my country, and I am not even American. Story 29. A former talk show host is the President of the United States. Vladimir Putin is welcome in Alaska at a base primarily meant to protect us from him. A 20-year-old named Big Balls is a high-level government advisor who was recently beaten up by a 15-year-old girl he likely propositioned for sex, which triggered martial law in Washington, D.C. Story 30. Honestly, it would have to be the fact that the tabloid millionaire from the 1980s was elected president. Story 31. I was going to say what happened on September 11th, but then the Donald Trump election in 2016 and everything that has come after is way more unbelievable. Story 32. The change in communications and the fact that everyone carries a small computer with them at all times, spending much of their time as a slave to it, is significant. Even though it is a telephone, people actively avoid using it as a telephone. Story 33. A coffee costs me about $8, and a pint of beer at the pub will set me back $16 in Australia. Story 34. The Republicans have become the party of radicals and have forsaken conservatism for Make America Great Again and Donald Trump. Story 35. Will it be mostly about Donald Trump? Yes. Either Reddit cannot seem to think about anything else, or it is easy upvotes. Story 36. I am a 30-year-old woman, not a 5-year-old. Also, my great-grandmother actually died. I honestly believed she would never die until maybe a couple of weeks before when I was 18. Story 37. Donald Trump is the president for the second time after an insurrection and 34 felonies, and is basically the generic evil villain from a movie, a bad one. Story 38. I would probably be more surprised at some of the things we do not have and that did not happen, for example, flying cars. Story 39. Nothing, because I would not understand anything since I would have been in a coma since I was a couple of months old and probably would have hardly developed cognition. Story 40. What do you mean we do not have hoverboards yet? What have you all been doing for 25 years? Give me my pink hoverboard and flying car. Damn it. Story 41. That smartphones now have completely functional capabilities and just enough intelligence to convince every other device it is their territory. Story 42. Well, I would have been around 10 years old when I went into a coma if that were the case, so I would probably be upset about not being able to watch many of my cartoons. Story 43. 1. September 11th and its impact on the world and culture from 2001 to 2015. 2. Russia-Ukraine war from 2014 to the present. 3. the beginning of the artificial intelligence age from 2022 to the present. 4. The rise of post-truth thinking in progressive movements where feelings and moral posturing now outweigh factual debate from 2016 to the present. 5. The 13-year gap between Grand Theft Auto 5 and Grand Theft Auto 6. 6. The Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Disclosure Act. Story 44. I think I would be baffled and terrified by the sudden intolerance rapidly growing around the world. The rise of racism, fascism, and literal yahoos running around America unchecked, and the failed businessman who pretends to be a good businessman running the country. I also assume I would be pretty concerned about the idiocracy if I were not too brain damaged from such a long coma. Story 45. What would be the most unbelievable thing to find out? Pluto, because it is no longer a planet. Story 46. I am 55. I would wonder about some technology and all that, but most surprising would be that hardly anything has really changed in 25 years, because I am sure I would be very excited to see all the changes, what the future would look like. I am very sure I would be very disappointed. Story 47. I saw a video yesterday where a man had just gotten out of prison after about 20 years, and he was amazed by the special flavors of candy, specifically M&M peanut butter and jelly. In the same breath, he couldn't believe it cost over $1 per bag. I would have to agree with him on both points. Story 48. For a Russian who has just experienced the 1990s and witnessed the 2000s, or perhaps a Ukrainian, learning about the war in Ukraine would be soul-crushing. Emerging from financial chaos and immediately facing war with people considered a brother nation is devastating. Most freedoms and technological advancements gained during this time are being banned and rolled back almost as soon as they are discovered. Story 49. Mobile phones are the most important items in your life. Directions, cameras, emails, games, music, official documents, house hunting, booking anything such as holidays, restaurants, and haircuts, doctor's appointments, photo editing, banking, bank cards, reward cards, gambling, TV, movies, and car hire. It can all be done from that tiny device in your hand. People would look at you like you have lost your mind using a Nokia 3310 to do all that. Mind blown. Story 50. Well, I am 35, so I would have been 10. Waking up with a deep voice, body hair, a beard, low-hanging testicles, and a strong desire for intimacy would be a crazy experience to suddenly have overnight. Story 51. Probably the rise of fascism in America. That would be a big shock considering the state of the United States in 2000. Socially inclusive, thriving economy before the dot-com burst, slow news spread with a few manageable points of verified truth, no alternative facts, no cult of personality shaping the world around one man. Story 52. Who the president was. Last I heard, he was a swindler of Atlantic City. Then, from that conversation, it would be the fall of Atlantic City. Then someone would say you can just gamble on cell phones. So that would be third. Story 53. I had missed 25 years of my life. I had gone from being a reasonably fit 20-year-old to an atrophied 45-year-old in what felt like the blink of an eye. All of my friends were now 25 years older and had rarely thought of me in decades, except to relay a tragic story. I had no real connections to people. I had missed so much. Story 54. I think after the initial shock of being in a coma, I would be most surprised to learn about the social progress society has made and the existence of a global pandemic. Story 55. The world is still standing. After that, I found out that universal healthcare is a reality and I do not owe anything. Also, the United States is now southern Canada. Story 56. I woke up from a 25-year nap, and the biggest surprise was that my flip phone is now a museum piece. I guess I will have to learn how to use this smart device. Story 57. When you think about what has happened in the last 25 years, it is difficult to pick just one event. I remember I had a Palm Pilot, and I was one of the only people I knew with one. Waking up and finding out that iPhones exist and that everybody has one would feel like science fiction. On top of that, everything artificial intelligence can do would blow my mind. Then there are the changes I would notice more slowly: electric cars, social media, and the rise of fascism. Gradually realizing that the world I woke up in was not a technology utopia but a world where technology went unchecked and ruined society. I would be very excited in the first few days after waking up, but after a few months, I would be extremely disappointed with the timeline. Story 58. Something about Lower Manhattan looks off. Where are all the payphones? How did Albert Gore do as president? Wait, what is a hanging Chad? Story 59. I wake up to flying cars, robots doing all the work, and people communicating through virtual reality headsets without touching each other. I am still trying to find a charger for my old Nokia. Story 60. Climate change is the real challenge facing humanity today. I attended my first climate conference in 1997. The consensus was that we could not allow global temperatures to rise by more than 1 degree Celsius, and that immediate action was mandatory. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Story 61. We are considering the period before September 11th, 2001, so it would be almost impossible to find anything relatable to before the coma. Basically, nobody had a cell phone in the year 2000. You would be moving from the year 2000 to the present. Story 62. Everyone wants to talk about phones, technology, cryptocurrency, and so on. For me, it would be finding out my best friend passed away at 27. I have a niece and nephew now in college, and learning that all of my grandparents have passed away. Story 63. Twofold. How far backwards we as a society have evolved, and that the phone in my hand is more capable than the desktops back then. Story 64. The fact that we still have not explored space as much as we could or should have. Also, the current state of United States American politics. Story 65. A pandemic happened, and even though we have instant audio and visual communication around the world, a much larger portion of the population than I ever thought possible was too incompetent and stubborn to make the minimal effort required to contain it for a month at worst. A large portion of them became so upset at being asked to do the minimum that they reacted with political choices and were misled by manipulative individuals. The person that the United States calls a president also contributed to this situation. Do we have interplanetary travel yet? The person leading those efforts did what now? Story 66. September 11th and 2 decades of global war that followed have shown how politics have become tied to identity for many, leading to extreme political division and vitriol among the American people. Story 67. They turned a Disney ride into a movie and one of the most successful franchises ever. Okay, not really. Actually, if I had skipped the last 25 years, given what I have known in the 2000s, I do not think that anything would surprise me to the point of disbelief. Story 68. How many people who were with me every day are now dead, young and old? They are mostly gone, and the few remaining have moved far away, but all to the same place. If I were in a coma, I would not have grown my own family, so I would be at home almost completely alone. Story 69. I do not know if I have been in a coma since 1 year old. It is probably my body developing from a baby to an adult. Story 70. I would be surprised that Vladimir Putin is still the president of Russia, having been elected by an internationally monitored popular vote. Maintaining popularity for such a long time seems unusual to me. Story 71. Electric cars are everywhere. The most valuable automaker is Tesla. They make cars that update over Wi-Fi and somewhat drive themselves. Story 72. Literally just that, because I am 31. I probably had 2 or 3 years of active memory before going into the coma. Story 73. What our phones can do. The Chicago Cubs won the World Series. Cleveland was also in that World Series and lost the lead after being ahead 3-1. The Detroit Lions went winless 1 season, then somehow were 30 points away from the Super Bowl. Story 74. Subscriptions for everything. The Queen died. King of the Hill ended 15 years ago and is now back. There is a new Bill and Ted movie, but it is not as good. America Online dial-up internet is still available, but only for a few more months. Story 75. That nobody ended it sooner. It is impressive that someone was willing to endure that for so long, but losing 25 years of my life in the middle is not acceptable. They really should have allowed me to move on at some point during that time. Story 76. Is the actor from Home Alone 2 the president? Also, mobile phones? What do you mean I can watch a whole movie on my phone? The phone fits in my pocket and can be used outside. Story 77. Donald Trump was elected president by the people. Since his first presidency was considered successful by some, they wanted to have a second term. Story 78. I would choose either smartphones and everything they can do or Donald Trump as president. We did have internet forums and blogs in 2000, so I think the phones and social media of today would make sense. But telling myself in 2000 that Donald Trump is our president would not compute. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.